Hey guys, MetalJesus here. Now, typically when I think of Chinese gaming systems and also handhelds, I kind of consider them to be somewhat poorly made, but also inexpensive. Well, recently I got sent for review this bad boy right here. This is the JXD S192K, and the K is very important because there's multiple versions of this. This is the latest one right here. And the crazy thing about this is not inexpensive. It is actually over $300. But is it worth it? Let's take a look. Alright, so what is this thing? Well, basically it's an Android tablet with joysticks bolted onto the sides. Inside you'll find quad-core processors running at 1.8 gigahertz. There's also a generous amount of 4 gigabytes of RAM as well as 64 gigabytes of storage. It has a pretty decent IPS screen running at a resolution of 1920 by 1200 pixels. And while we're on the subject of the screen, well, mine came with 2 defects. You can see them here. Now, please ignore all the little specks of dust on here. These 2 little dots, they're permanent on the screen. I can't clean them off. They're kind of underneath. It's really disappointing, again, because this thing is $300. You would expect it to be, well, nearly perfect. I mean, that's kind of what I expected. Now, to be fair, it doesn't really affect the gameplay or even the use of this because when the screen's on, you don't really notice the defects, but they're there. Now I want to give you an idea just how big this thing is. Here it is compared to the Game Boy Advance, and here it is next to the Nintendo Switch. And I do have to say, I really like the build quality of this device. The plastic feels very solid. It's big, but it feels great in my hands. I mean, this is a very comfortable machine to use. Let's walk around the device so you can get a better look at it. Here is the right-hand side, and notice it has a thumbstick as well as buttons, and they're very clicky. They're really nice. On the left side, you have another thumbstick as well as a D-pad. You also have a menu button as well as a back button. And then in the front, you have shoulder buttons as well as 2 triggers. On the back of the unit, you have a USB port which charges the battery. You also have a headphone jack and a micro SD card slot that can support up to 128 gigabytes if you need it. On the front, you have the volume controls for your external speakers as well as a power button, but you also have HDMI out, and this became very handy for me because I was able to capture all the footage that you're going to see here using this with my Elgato. It was very handy. I want to very quickly show some of the apps that are pre-installed on this. Now, again, it uses Android, so if you're familiar with that interface, this is going to be very familiar to you. Of course, you have the Google Play Store. You also have YouTube, a web browser. It also has a camera app in here because it does have a 5 megapixel camera built into it. And there's a bunch of pre-installed apps you would expect with most Android installations. However, this also comes with 18 pre-installed emulators, so we're going to check out some of those. This was the part of the device that I was most interested in because I was hoping it was going to be powerful enough to run some of these emulators that are a bit tougher to run, that require a bit more beefier hardware. So first, let's check out the Dreamcast emulator. Yeah, okay, this sucks. This is not running well at all. And I tried going into some of the settings for the emulator and tweak some of it. Nope, this is as good as it'll run it. I tried a couple other Dreamcast games and got, well, even worse results. Oh my God. So this is how it ships. I mean, this is supposedly configured. Well, okay, let's try some N64 games. I mean, that's at least a generation prior, so it should run that pretty well. But as you can see, it's struggling. However, you'll notice that the resolution has been bumped up, and so I realize, oh, okay, it's trying to run it in a higher resolution that it's just too taxing on the hardware. So for this particular emulator, I was able to go into its settings and actually change the rendered resolution down to something closer to what it originally would be on the N64. And then as you can see, oh, it runs it perfectly. And then as a test, I bumped it up a little bit higher to 640 by 480. And as you can see, actually, it looks pretty good and it's running really solid. Keep in mind, I'm using my Elgato that captures at 30 frames a second. So on the device itself, it actually is running, 60 frames a second or more if it can. So to be fair, well, it can't run Dreamcast, but it can run Nintendo 64 games. I was kind of curious how it would run PSP games because I love my PSP games and I thought this might be kind of a cool alternative. Well, when I first fired it up, it struggled with almost every PSP game I threw at it. It was only after going into the settings and really turning off and disabling a bunch of stuff that I was able to get even remotely a decent frame rate on it. But I still wouldn't consider it really an alternative because as you can see, it's dropping frames left and right. It's still struggling big time just to play any of these games. So it's kind of disappointing. It would have been cool if it had enough power to run these at a higher resolution, but no. And you can't bump it down either. You can't lower it to its original resolution. So again, it struggles big time. However, PlayStation 1 games run really well on this device. I was really surprised. I mean, I threw at it a bunch of games and yeah, they look great. Here's Symphony of the Night, as well as Einhander, which is a really cool shoot 'em up. And then there's also Silent Hill. And then finally, Disruptor. But I think the reason why these are running so well is, as you can tell, it's not trying to upscale the graphics. So it's running them, I believe, in its native resolution, which it has enough power to pull off. It also comes with a Nintendo DS emulator, and I was kind of curious about this because, the DS has two screens and this only has one. How would it handle it? Well, it actually does it really well. Basically, you have complete control over how you want the screens to be laid out. You just push a button and you can either put them side by side and you can switch them around, or you can make one of them the main screen and then swap out to the other one really quickly with just a button press. I also found that the DS games ran really well. Now, they don't look the best and they probably could benefit from a little bit of, anti-aliasing, but overall, they were pretty fun to play. What about older systems like, say, the Super Nintendo? As you can see here, it runs the games flawlessly. I mean, as far as I can tell, they look and run great. However, as you play them, you start to notice something that's kind of annoying. And that is, there's a noticeable delay when you push the physical button on the device itself and what happens on the screen. It's kind of disappointing. I was hoping the hardware was going to be powerful enough and also integrated enough with the emulators to not have this problem. I mean, that was my hope. This is especially noticeable when you're playing some shooters like Raiden Trad here on the Genesis, or perhaps Gunstar Heroes. By the way, I love this game. I completely forgot how much fun this was. I played it a ton, but it is difficult when there's a slight delay. Now, it is an Android device. How does it play Android games? Well, here is Real Racing 3. This is downloadable through the Android store. And yeah, it looks and plays really well. But what I love about it is it does support the physical controls and it works flawlessly. This is actually a really great game to play with those controls because it's really tight, looks great, plays great. I had a lot of fun with it. But check this out. This is a game called Modern Combat 5 by Gameloft. It's a Call of Duty clone for mobile devices. I actually played and beat this on my iPad about a year ago. So I downloaded it from the Google Play Store and I was playing through it here and it's like, man, this doesn't look right. This doesn't look good at all. So I fired up the iPad version. This is how the game should look. Notice the water and also the particle effects. I mean, this looks way better for some reason. I guess what's disappointing about this is that I assumed that since this had such a high price point, it would probably be a good Android tablet for gaming, and that is simply not true. Again, you can get a much better gaming device if you want to go mobile by just getting an iPad. Another thing that was kind of annoying, every once in a while, it just wouldn't recognize me touching the screen. I don't know why. It was really frustrating. So as you can see, I'm not very impressed with this, especially at that price point. I'd have a hard time recommending really anybody go out and buy this. And you know, I admire that it's trying to do a lot. I love the fact that they're adding, you know, physical controllers and buttons to an Android device. But as you can see, for the most part, it doesn't work very well. And also, the tablet part is a little bit underpowered. So I'm not exactly sure who I would recommend this to, especially at that price point. It's so hard to do. I mean, basically, for less, you can get a PlayStation Vita and a stack of games. Now, I know it's not exactly, you know, apples to oranges, but most of the people that watch this channel are hardcore gamers, and that's what I would recommend you do with your money. Now, if you are curious about this, there is going to be a link down in the video description below. I believe every once in a while they run sales on it, so maybe you can get it a little bit cheaper. I mean, that's the only way I think anyone should really buy one of these. But even then, I think there's better solutions out there, or at least better options for, like, say, a tablet. So, all right, guys, love to know what you think down in the comments below. As always, I want to thank you for watching my channel. Thank you for subscribing, and take care. You know, I'm curious, is input delay just a byproduct of doing emulation? Is it possible to get close to, you know, no delay like using the real system by doing emulation? Is that even possible? I mean, I have no idea. I know it's probably tough and it probably depends on the hardware, but just kind of curious. It's, you know, disappointing, but anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like these, please subscribe because I release 2 new videos every single week. Thanks for watching.